Will you tell me the honest truth about something?
I'll try.
Do you still say your prayers?
No, Mom. I never said my prayers, never once. They scared me. What's so funny?
You're right. No, our prayers don't help us. Prayers don't do a goddamn thing.
This movie is incredibly effective at creating a mood and just making you feel dread throughout its runtime. And I was kind of shocked when it was ramping up towards the conclusion because one of his previous films, The Blackcoat's Daughter, I remember thinking like, holy shit, this movie's still going? This feels so long. And it felt a little plodding even though I was liking it. And this is just so clean and mean. And the performances, from Michael Monroe, the actress who plays her mother, and of course Nicolas Cage are, not just effective, but incredibly memorable. And it has a very powerful conclusion that leaves one wondering. And its virtues are many. And I didn't get so caught up in trying to figure out what he was trying to draw from or imitate. Because I'm beyond getting scared of, ooh, Satan. But the way that it's approached and realized here, it fucked me up. And you speak of, creating, talismans to inspire certain things to happen. And it uses, the very real phenomenon of family annihilation, in a way that I think one could argue could give a pass to those perpetrators, because often they definitely have motives and they are monstrous people. But when you, especially in the final sequence, when you see it play out, in reality for the first time, it is so unsettling. Because if things were beyond your control and you were just driven to do something unspeakable, like that fucking terrifies me.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 48. Folks, the summer's horror du jour is here. Longlegs is this summer's must-see horror film, and all it took was an incredibly elaborate and hyperbolic marketing campaign. We'll discuss everything Longlegs a bit later in the show. We're going to discuss Nicolas Cage's performance. We're going to discuss our theories onto what happened in the movie. We're going to talk about whether or not the film should be canonized among all the horror greats, or did we all get conned into buying a ticket to absolute nonsense? Before that, though, we've got a lot of film news to get into. We have a watch list that's going to celebrate both the new and the old, including 2 more of 2024's notable horror offerings. And then, of course, we're going to wrap the show up with the Mentionables. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, please do hit that like and subscribe button. And even if you don't like us, maybe you just kind of want to see what the other side of the argument is, which kind of seems to be the case this week with my controversial minisode all about the forthcoming Deadpool and Wolverine, and basically how I think the movie should not exist. It should not be a thing. Logan should have ended the saga of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Please go and watch that if you haven't. Leave some feedback, good or bad. I welcome it all. I read it all. I do not care. I promise you are not going to hurt my feelings. I am very secure in my opinions. So please do go and watch that and tell me what you think. But yeah, otherwise, Chuck, anything else you wanted to mention before we got into the meat of the show?
Just to apologize up front for my son being a little upset and out of sorts. unwilling to accept my remedies. The jangling keys are not working right now. But yeah, I was actually kind of surprised we didn't get anyone agreeing with us, considering. But I think that both sides of the nerd ideological aisle, deep down, want Deadpool and Wolverine to succeed, to be the thing that makes those movies better. Because
Yeah.
I have seen a lot of discourse from people who have never watched a Marvel movie before, who have been attempting to work through it. On places like True Film and just elsewhere on Reddit, for example. And I know that's not. I know some people are very skeptical, and view Reddit very dubiously, especially Reddit opinions. But a lot of the reactions from those people is, how the fuck did these movies even get popular in the first place? And and the answer that a lot of people came to was well, it was the novelty of seeing all these characters being treated, well, having a lot of money thrown at it, and seeing them all on screen, even if it is just kind of boring and uninspired. For a movie in Civil War, the main set piece is on a empty airport, airfield, except for all of the various heroes duking it out, and seeing Spider-Man, that was the only reason anyone was supremely hyped for that movie. And I think Deadpool and Wolverine is just scratching that same itch. And meet myself personally, I just want to see Cassandra Nova on screen. I like that idea.
Yeah.
I'm a Grant Morrison stan of the highest order. Everything, that they've ever made. I pronouned them correctly. I'll have you know. But that said, if you do have some disagreement, leave the personal attacks out of there. You barely know who we are. The algorithm just put us in front of you. But moving on, there a lot of people died, but the news moves quickly. So quickly, rip to Shannon Doherty. But really, the only death of the last 2 weeks that I was really concerned with was that of Shelley Duvall, an actress who's been very important to me. A lot of it, I grew up watching Robert Altman's Popeye, and of course, The Shining, and she was just a unique actress from a unique era, and she never found her way out of that era, unfortunately. And she passed away, from complications arising from diabetes, which is very rough for someone to experience. But I just wanted to look back on her career a little bit. What kind of a relationship do you have with Shelley Duvall as an actor?
Yeah, it's interesting because there was a lot of death this week in the celebrity world, and I think we're a little too young for Bob Newhart.
Yes, that was the other one.
But we are right in the wheelhouse of Shelley Duvall, and specifically for me, as far as my age goes, I saw her as the mom in things. When I was a young kid, I was watching, this would have been the early 90s, the mid 90s. She was getting all of those mom roles. And so the stuff I remember her from was the mom from the Frankenweenie short that,
really?
Tim Burton did. Yeah, okay. She was the mom in that. Or she was the mom in the Hulk Hogan vehicle Suburban Commando.
That's right. I fucking forgot about that. I watched the trailer for that movie multiple times in my life because it was in the pre-roll of the VHS for Secret of the Ooze, the second Turtles movie. I've never actually seen it apart from a half hour on cable TV one time. Golly.
Yeah, it's pretty awful, but it's just one of those artifacts from childhood, and so yeah, that's kind of how I saw her initially. And then of course, once I got a little older, I went back and watched some of the other stuff she was in. Of course, The Shining, which is the thing everybody talks about, and then stuff like Time Bandits too. Time Bandits was huge, and that's going to probably even have a resurgence now in 2024 because of the TV show that's being made on Apple, I think. But yeah, so that's kind of how I remembered her. She was just a lady who was I don't know how to describe her, unconventionally attractive, I would say, and that sort of landed her the roles that it did land her, especially earlier in her career.
Absolutely. And as you
Hmm.
can see playing on the screen right here, like I've mentioned it before, but my dad saw boobs on A&E one night, or like, from his point of view, it was like graphic sex. So he cut the cord with cable and he let my mom know, and she's like, well, shit, I have like a month to hoard as much VHS content as I can. And she taped like pretty much every single fairy tale theater episode, which was something she did for Showtime in its nascent decade. And they just grabbed all of her celebrity friends and they would just do these really homespun adaptations of fairy tales. It's like for the young at heart, whatever age you might be. And so I wore those tapes out. I watched fairy tale theater so much, and every single one began with her introducing herself and introducing whatever it was. Most memorably, she played Rapunzel alongside Jeff
Mm.
Bridges as the prince in the Rapunzel episode. And other than that, I think she maybe was in Rumpelstiltskin, but she mostly just took a back seat for other people to do it. And and good news, they're all available in like 480p on YouTube right now,
Nice.
because they used to be on Netflix a long time ago. And that's what my go-to for her is, because I just grew up knowing who Shelley Duvall was, even though I had
Yeah.
never seen a movie of hers until my parents bought Popeye, which was a very dry film to show a child. I didn't get it.
Hmm.
I didn't understand what Altman was all about. And I haven't seen it in years, but now I, of course, feel very compelled to. Of course, I'm probably going to watch The Shining one of these days when I get a minute, because
Yep.
that performance, iconic. But
Yeah, for sure.
but everything's rising and falling in America, and amongst them, is a new era for Paramount. They have sold out at long last to Skydance. Tell us, how did this happen?
Yeah, this has been sort of in the works for a while, I think for over a year now, and it just kind of it would fall through and then it would be back on again and it would fall through and it was just kind of they were playing a game of chicken, I think, as far as the offering price went. But yeah, I'm really surprised more people aren't talking about this because this is a pretty big deal in my opinion. This is essentially um they're going to probably keep the name Paramount, but essentially what this is another Funimation situation where basically um, Crunchyroll or Funimation bought Crunchyroll, but then they kept the name Crunchyroll because it was like the bigger name. It was the more synonymous name with anime. And so that's essentially is what's happening here is basically Skydance, for all intents and purposes, is wearing the skin suit of Paramount. And it's not Paramount that is the company that's surviving this. It's Skydance. And so that's what's going to happen here. And yeah, CEO David Ellison, he's most, I think, well known in like the tech sector. So that's going to be interesting because when you look at their sort of, they released a document of their stated short-term goals, and it's definitely wrapped up in like the tech sector where they're like, you know, we want to get rid of our linear TV stuff. We want to become a tech forward company. We are going to use AI to cut costs and enhance creativity. They're going to embrace something called the studio in the cloud model, which is basically like it's the idea that the studio itself won't have like a home base that everything is going to be done over like computers and like video calls and so yeah they want to step into the future with this acquisition or with this merger. And I don't know, how do you feel about that? Do you think the skies look clear for Paramount, or is it as grim as ever?
Well, just because it's topical, I have to point out that that whole decentralized cloud-based model is kind of perilous, considering the
Mhm.
CrowdStrike disaster that we're currently living through. I apologize to not apologize. I feel sorry for anyone who had to take a flight, the past few days. Did you hear about that? Yeah.
Yeah, that like tech security company or whatever, they caused the blue screen of death all around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, that wasn't a malicious actor making something happen, or so we're being told. It was just a poor deployment of the latest, update of some kind of, system that they utilize and that a lot of different things rely on. And I can only imagine how that would grind things to a halt. Now, shopping around BET, I only ever watched it for the hip hop videos and the rap videos when I was in a hotel room. Their flavor of content isn't necessarily for me, but whenever something you're supposed to be making fucking movies, what does tech forward or like in TV content, I suppose, what does being tech forward actually do to facilitate that? I think that they're just going to burn a lot of money, write off a lot of content that and cut their strings to things that are expensive and not profitable, like that Halo show. And then what are they going to make? What do they have in their stable that they can put out there to actually keep people plugged in? We stopped subscribing to Paramount Plus a long time ago. And
Sure.
They're going to have to do something major to make me come back to it.
Yeah, well, when you look at, Skydance's history or like the type of stuff that Skydance produces, they are a incredibly risk-averse company where they are, Skydance is the Mission Impossible series. Skydance is, I think they might have done like that shitty Apple movie, The Family Plan with Mark Wahlberg and Michelle Monaghan. They did the latest Transformers movie. They did let's see what else. They did Air. I know that they did Air. So they're incredibly risk averse and they only want sure bets. And so I think that is probably what's gonna happen more so than anything is, if it's not a sure bet, it's not gonna be made, basically, at this point. And yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting going forward because, in my opinion, the most notable thing in this, I mean, as far as the people are concerned, is they are going to be looking to cut $2 billion in costs over the next couple of years, and I think what that translates to is probably a lot of jobs getting cut, unfortunately, and just a lot of getting your teams down to the most essential of people. And yeah, it's probably not going to be a fun thing. And if it makes Paramount survive or what is left of Paramount survive, I guess it'll all be worth it in the end. But yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if they also sold off Star Trek too, honestly, because I know that's one of the things that they had sort of in their back pocket that they were looking to shop around a bit, was just the Star Trek property in general. Is they're looking to offload it, I think.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of that because there's definitely a lot of interested buyers for that kind of thing. They're gonna trim the bureaucratic fat, like a lot of other companies. The DEI bureaucracy is probably gonna get their pink slip and get sent out the door, and one can hope that this leads to the people best suited to a job getting it, no matter who or what they are, and that leading to more enjoyable content. But we'll just have to wait and see. But the means that one can acquire content, even just for a rental period, is definitely shifting away from physical media yet again, because we no longer have Redbox. I am so used to these things being ever present in front of every grocery store I ever go into, and now they are no more. And there's no one buying it. It's just going bankrupt. Is that right?
Yeah, they were basically forced into Chapter 7 because they were already in what is the one where you restructure? Is that Chapter 11, I think?
Yeah.
And They tried to restructure, and they've actually been missing payments. They've been trying to pay off their debt, and they missed a payment. And so, yeah, basically, a judge basically forced them into Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is the very bad type of bankruptcy. And yeah, so the company will close. They will sell off all assets, including their little used streaming service, and they also owned the little used streaming service Crackle too, and so that's going to be sold off. They're basically being stripped for parts.
I visit them
And
frequently.
yeah, I mean, this is notable
started back in the early
in my
2000s,
opinion because it
peaked in the business
effectively
about a decade
ends
ago, but
the
of course,
disc, like
with
mass
streaming
market
coming, they've really been
disc-based
struggling,
renting,
and so they,
as we know
company,
it, because
the parent company for
you
Redbox
still have a
filing for
couple options
bankruptcy.
out
And
there,
Redbox
like
posted a final
very,
message
very
on Twitter saying
specialized
simply,
stuff, like
"Love
other
you
than the library, of course. I mean, you can always go to the library and get stuff, but there is the occasional video store that's still out there, but those are only in like really big cities. I know like one of the main ones in LA is called Vidiot's, and that's like one of the big ones. But and then of course you have like the occasional mail-based service still. Like I know the game rental company Gamefly has a very, very small movie selection that you can get stuff, but yeah, I mean, this effectively ends disc-based rentals. And so I'm curious, did you ever actually use Redbox? Was there like a time period where you used it,
Yeah.
or did you use it recently at all, or when was the last time?
The last time was probably actually in like 2010, 2011. It wasn't even me that I watched
with those
The
big
Hangover
red
at
boxes.
my
Visit them
RA's house in
frequently.
college.
Started back in the early
at his
2000s, peaked in the
apartment.
business about a
And it was, like,
decade
the
ago,
last
but of
week of
course,
the
with streaming
semester
coming,
there
they've really been struggling, and so
ADACA,
they,
he was-
company, the
And
parent
I was
company
like,
for
I want
Redbox
to watch
filing
this
for
again. And he was like,
bankruptcy.
okay,
And
yeah, just
Redbox
take it
posted
back
a
by,
final message on Twitter
tomorrow
saying simply,
afternoon or
"Love you
something
guys."
like that. It just so happened that that was like the end of day, and the union at NDSU was going to be shutting up shop, and I was running in there at the last minute to stuff it in the box, and one of the workers there was like, "Yo, you can't be here," and I was like, "Hey, I got to get this in there," and he was like, "Okay," and he like escorted me to it and escorted me out, and I have never actually been a customer of it because I was gun shy, because when I worked at Hornbacher's, like there was just this recurring problem where people would rent stuff from it, especially video games, and then they would pop it open, and
Oh,
someone
the scam?
the scam, and someone would have put like a different disc in there, so people weren't getting what they wanted. Because there was a movie one time where I was like, "Ooh, Redbox has it. I can get it from them," and then like a coworker of mine wanted to rent like the latest Gears of War, and then here it was
With
like
those
My
big
Little Pony,
red
Friendship
boxes.
is
I
Magic.
visit them
was in
frequently.
there
Yeah,
instead.
started back in the
And-
early 2000s,
'cause,
peaked
like,
in the
that
business
was-
about a decade ago,
they were
but of course,
quite vulnerable
with
to that kind
streaming
of stuff.
coming, they've really been struggling,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
they,
because it was
company,
a
the parent
if
company
people
for
don't
Redbox
know,
filing for
the
bankruptcy.
discs
Redbox
on the
posted a final
inside of
message on Twitter saying
the
simply,
hole in the
"Love
middle,
you guys."
there was a sticker that had like a barcode on it. And you could basically, if you were very careful, you could rip that sticker off and then just put it on another disc. And then, you could pop it back in the Redbox, and the Redbox scans that barcode, and it's like, yep, that's right. We got our movie back.
Yeah.
And so it was incredibly vulnerable.
Which at the same time, streaming just made it like that was my high piracy era too. I just avoided buying anything unless I absolutely loved it. And just so physical media was reserved strictly just for my video collection, and I would try things out the illegal way. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in kind of a unique situation where my mom, she does not have Wi-Fi internet at her house.
That's right.
And I don't think I don't think she ever will, honestly. She just, it's
with
not
those big
something,
red
she has like her
boxes.
cell
Visit them
phone with her,
frequently.
her mobile data
Started
plan,
back in
and
the
that's
early
really all she
2000s,
uses.
peaked
And
in the
so
business about a decade
I had
ago,
used
but
Redbox
of course,
probably as
with
recently as
streaming
like maybe like
coming,
6
they've really
months
been
ago,
struggling, and
like
so
around
they-
Christmas
company,
time,
the parent
to
company for
rent a
Redbox
movie
filing
that
for
to bring to her
bankruptcy.
house that we could
Redbox
watch.
posted a final
And
message
so
on
yeah, I
Twitter
was
saying
using this
simply,
pretty
"Love you guys."
recently, and so I'm not really sure what. I guess I'll just have to buy the movies that I want to watch with her, watch at her house. But there was a time period, I think, where this was the ideal business, the ideal scenario, because, and I would say that that time period was probably like kind of what you said, around 2008 maybe to like 2012, where the discs only cost $1, so it was cheap. It was cheaper than digital renting, because digital renting was usually around $4 or $5, and digital rental was still not very reliable, because around that time period, the early 2010s, you could rent a movie on Apple or rent a movie on Google or whatever, and you would still get like the buffering all the time, or the shitty artifacting, because internet hadn't quite caught up yet. The speeds hadn't quite caught
With
up
those
yet
big
to
red
watch
boxes.
those movies.
Visit them
And so
frequently.
Yeah,
disc
started
based
back in
was
the early
still
2000s,
your best
peaked in the
bet.
business
But
about
then,
a
of course,
decade ago,
internet
but
caught
of
up, and
course,
now we can watch
with
anything and
streaming
everything.
coming, they've really
And
been
the
struggling, and so
you don't really have as
company,
many
the parent
problems
company
with
for Redbox filing
buffering
for
and
bankruptcy.
stuff
And
like
Redbox
that. And
posted
so
a final
yeah,
message
it's
on
just
Twitter
kind of,
saying simply,
it's a
"Love you
bygone
guys."
thing. And I wonder what happened to there. Did you ever hear about Redbox Pharmacy
What? That
or
was
Redbox?
that
I think
never
it was
did.
called Redbox RX. Yeah. So
That
they
was
did
very
try.
forward thinking of them.
Yeah, they did try, and about 2 or 3 years ago, Redbox did try and pivot, and so they came out with these things called Redbox RX, where they were basically the same thing as the video rental kiosks, but it was for prescription medicine, basically.
That is
And
so weird.
yeah, but then
But
of course
cool.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, it is cool, because I think Amazon has that now. So of course they ate their lunch, and you can get your prescriptions from any number of mail order services now, and where you don't even have to go to a store to pick it up. You can just get it sent directly to your house. So it's like,
And you don't get a lecture from a pharmacist, 'cause
yeah,
your insurance says I need to talk to you about this.
yeah. So yeah, well,
With
I
those
mean,
big
rest in peace,
red
Redbox.
boxes.
Visit them frequently.
I'm gonna miss you. And,
Started back in the
I
early
hope
2000s,
that
peaked in the business
I hope
about a
that
decade
this
ago,
isn't
but of
another
course,
nail in the
with
coffin for
streaming
physical
coming,
media,
they've really been
because
struggling, and so the company, the parent
we
company
should be
for Redbox filing
focusing
for bankruptcy.
more on
Redbox posted a final message on Twitter
the
saying
buying
simply,
side, I think,
"Love you
anyways,
guys."
as far as like, you want to buy your releases more so than, because I mean, if you're going to rent on Redbox, or you're going to rent on Google Play or Apple, who cares? As far as the fight for physical media goes, we want to focus on the buying aspect of it, the aspect of literally owning a physical good. So I don't think that this really has any effect on that front. At least I hope it doesn't, but I guess that remains to be seen.
It certainly does. And there was something else I was going to bring up, but it has escaped my brain. So we will move on to the watch list. And this one is something I watched a long time ago, relative to now. And that is Late Night with the Devil. It fell on one of our off weeks when we were working on a minisode instead of a main show. And I just forgot to put it on the dock. So I'm cheating a little bit. I'm talking about it now. This is a delightfully little entry in 2024 horror. It's really fucked up, and it's a great period piece. The like that era of late night, chat show, variety show entertainment was very unique. People always just think of Johnny Carson, but Dick Cavett, was that his name?
Yep.
Yeah, like that guy, like it's more of that style where it's a little racier, it's a little edgier, and it's just a little more laid back. But of course the premise is, what's his first name? Dalmatian.
David.
David Dalmatian is playing this host, and we get this pre-roll about how his rise to success was, meteoric, but he never could quite reach the level of the main players. And then his wife dies of, cancer or something, and it's very sad. And he starts melting down, and his ratings start dipping. So he plans this, totally balls, to the wall Halloween special. And what we are watching is like the broadcast itself, and then the behind the scenes stuff between segments. And of course the main event is this like exorcism of a girl who survived a cult. And so like that's the setup, and I don't want to spoil too much, but it does such a good job of lampooning everyone from the amazing Randy to that like one like psychic guy who could bend spoons, and and then of course just various cults of the era, and it really gets out there as it progresses and everything gets weirder. And by the finale, you're just like left wondering what the fuck happened. Essentially, like what was real and what wasn't. But of course, the implication is all of it was real. And it's well worth a watch on Shudder, or wherever it's living. I forget. Well, yeah, Shudder is the place. Yep. It was well worth the free trial to get to watch this.
Okay, yeah, I got to check this out. My relationship with Shudder these days is basically like, I'll subscribe for a month, and then I'll unsubscribe for like 6 months and let the movies kind of build up, all their new originals, and then I'll subscribe for a month. And so I think I have a good amount of movies built up now between like this and I don't know if you've heard of that other new one, The Devil's Bath. I've heard of good things about that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
okay.
There's another new one too that's I don't think it's on Shudder quite yet. I think in the next month or so. It's still in theaters now, but have you heard of Oddity?
No, I haven't.
Okay. This is another one that I think is going to be one of the big horror movies of 2024. It's just in, I want to say like limited release right now, but it's another creepy doll horror movie. And from what I understand, it's basically a movie about a woman whose husband gets murdered, and then she uses like possessed objects to get revenge on her husband's murderers.
Interesting.
Like physically possessed like objects. And so yeah, it looks very, very interesting. But yeah, anyways, that's I think I really need to resubscribe to watch this too.
Yeah, I know some people acted really self-righteous about the use of AI generated art for like the chapter, intertitles, but I'm not upset about that. I guess maybe that's hypocritical of me, but they're on screen for seconds, and I doubt that many people were deprived. I'm sure everyone in the art department who worked on this movie had plenty of work to do. Like that's the reality of it. Like it is a very well made movie. That's what I will say there. And now you have a report on the finale for Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah, this is one I've been meaning to talk about for like 3 weeks now. And normally I'd probably remove a show like this from our watch list when it no longer becomes topical, but I kind of wanted to hold on to this one because, when it comes to this show, I'm going to be that guy that is on the floor of the stock exchange that is telling you to buy shares now, buy, because this show, the price is soon, it's going to go up. And, what I mean by that is basically ever since Succession ended, I feel like I've been on the hunt for the next great TV show. And I thought I had found it with Yellow Jackets, but that show kind of shit the bed. And then I thought I found it with The Lazarus Project, but that show got canceled after its second season, and it ends on a cliffhanger. And then I thought I had found it with Severance, but that sort of remains to be seen if that can recapture the magic of the first season. And so, I mean, so much time has passed since that first season, so we'll see. But let me tell you, I think I've found it because I enjoyed season 1 of this show. I thought the first season was violent. It had a lot of great horror and a lot of great melodrama, and it sort of skirted the line between actually being good and being like an enjoyable guilty pleasure. But what they've done with season 2 is they've sort of toned down all of the like ridiculous over the top violence. They've increased the romance, they've increased the drama, they've increased the mystery, and they've really just expanded the scope of this world. And season 2, if you know anything about the book that it's based on, season 2 mostly takes place in a performing arts theater in Paris around World War II. Louis and Claudia, they're on the run after they killed Lestat, and Louis has basically struck up a new romance with another vampire named Armand. And yeah, this show just, in my opinion, it really does more than anything. It does the romance right. It takes all of that homoerotic subtext from the book and it basically makes it text. It's just full on gay, and I think it's done really successfully. Like, to me, I don't know, you can take my opinion with a grain of salt as a straight man, but I feel like there's a difference between a well thought out, developed gay romance in a show and then something where they look at a script and they just say, let's make this character gay because we should have that in our show.
Yeah.
And this show does it right. It's very well developed. You really become endeared to the characters, and yeah, this was incredible. This season of this show was, I'm so excited for season 3. It's already been announced, and here's what's going to happen with this show. This is what I'm predicting. This show is going to have the Breaking Bad trajectory, where the first season is going to get dropped on Netflix in mid-August. They've already announced this.
Oh.
And what is going to happen, just like with Breaking Bad, is when the show was actually on TV, on AMC, it had a pretty good cult following, but nobody was really watching it. And then Breaking Bad got dropped on Netflix, and that show became a meteoric hit. And every season after that, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is exactly what is going to happen with this show. Season 1 will be dropped on Netflix in mid-August, and then season 2 probably around the same time next year. And then people are going to be like, okay, I need to watch this thing as it happens. I need to watch this thing as it airs. I need to subscribe to AMC Plus. So buy. Get your shares because it's going to blow up. Don't be one of the Netflix plebeians. This show is going to be huge. And so, yeah, that's where I'll leave it for now. But
get on board right now.
Mm-hmm.
And golly, I think that speaks to, because Halo was on my mind, and we all know just how ham-fisted it approached everything from its fan service, to its homosexual relationships. Everything was just, we are just checking off boxes here. There's no no thought or intention behind it. This is how you do it. Anne Rice, should be proud. She passed away, didn't she?
Yeah, a couple years ago, 2018 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's not rolling in her grave. The good things are happening here. I need to get beyond the first season so I can catch up to where this is at. Mm-hmm. Because I'm too busy watching what my wife likes to watch, and for some reason, she has seen every Cuba Gooding Jr. movie. And she has no clue who Denzel Washington is, because she's never seen a Denzel Washington movie without really retaining it. But when she was a little girl, for some reason, she loved watching Men of Honor, that deep sea diver, military training camp movie starring Cuba Gooding Jr. and Robert De Niro as this racist-ass diving instructor. And it is just such a product of its era. It has so many tropes within it that would just be totally unacceptable today, and just, like, reek of, just like uncreativity, when it comes to this kind of thing. There's no nuance to anything. Like the one of the first things that happens when, like, he gets into his barracks is everybody, like, says, "I won't be, in here with an N-word," and then they all, like, walk out and go to a different barracks. And then there's a note on his bed, like they knew where his bed was going to be ahead of time, that says, "We're going to drown you." And the only person who is his friend is the stuttering, weirdo played by, God dang it, what the frick is that guy's name? I need to look it up now, because it was just so weird that he was in this movie at all, and that he was playing the character he was playing. Let me see here.
Yeah, I can't help you. I've nenever seen this, unfortunately.
I need to know. Okay.
This is
Michael
as
Rappaport.
far as
Michael Rappaport.
Michael Rappaport. Okay, yeah.
And Charlize Theron is in this, playing De Niro's, like, alcoholic, and just, like, depressed, wife who just picks up, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character after he's found out his dad died, and he's crying at the phone booth. She's just like, "Oh, hey, my husband didn't come to, celebrate our anniversary, so let's just go to the bar he's at and make him jealous." And it's just so weird. It's such a thankless role. But, like, have you ever seen this?
No, I haven't. I was going to ask you, whether or not it's worth watching, because this is one of those movies. Okay. Because this is one of those movies that I remember, speaking of physical discs and renting, when I went to the video store when I was a kid, this is one of those movies I can picture the VHS box in my mind, because it was one of those ones I always saw. I always walked by it. I always passed by it. And when I was a kid, I was never open to renting something like this. I just looked at the cover and I was like, boring, this looks boring. And so, I don't know, I guess nowadays I would be a lot more open to watching a movie of this type, just like, because I'm more open to these types of films. But yeah, I guess if you're saying it's not worth it, then I probably won't.
I'll say this. Whenever they are actually diving and they're underwater and they're doing stuff, it's really good. Like, that stuff is actually cool and kind of thrilling. But as soon as it's just concerned with, like, like, how racist can we be towards this black guy and how resilient can he be towards it, it just grinds to a halt for me personally. Yeah, like, like, not that I have no respect for because this is based on a true story. The real guy endured something like this. But the movie, like, barely, like, makes him actually interesting. His relationship with his, like, soon-to-be wife is just, paper thin. It's not really developed at all. And he winds up with a son at the end that, like, literally has no lines in the movie. And I've come to find out in researching him that this guy had 5 marriages before he died.
Oh, gosh.
But... so, like, if you want to, get a time capsule of Hollywood from an era and see some cool, underwater sequences and photography, that's what's worth it. But the vast majority of this movie just made me look at my phone. Like, there's definitely been some improvements to how we write and how we edit and how we, make things a little more interesting throughout.
Mm-hmm.
But in speaking of taking things from the past and I guess trying to make them new again, we'll move on to our main event today, which is, of course, Osgood Perkins' latest film, Longlegs. And a lot has been made in pre-release hype discourse about how, like, it's like the Silence of the Lambs. It's yada 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 yada, and like that, you're just scratching the surface of what this movie actually is. It does things that Silence of the Lambs couldn't even be bothered to do, or at least, like, it does things more than that. I'm not saying it's a better movie than Silence of the Lambs, but they're different animals, and this movie is incredibly effective at creating a mood and just making you feel dread throughout its runtime. And I was kind of shocked when it was ramping up towards the conclusion, because one of his previous films, The Blackcoat's Daughter, I remember thinking like, holy shit, this movie's still going? This feels so long. And it felt a little plodding, even though I was liking it. And this is just so clean and mean. And the performances, from Micah Monroe, the actress who plays her mother, and of course Nicolas Cage, are not just effective but incredibly memorable. And it has a very powerful conclusion that leaves one wondering. And its virtues are many. And I didn't get so caught up in trying to figure out what he was trying to draw from or imitate. Because like I'm beyond getting scared of ooh Satan, but the way that it's approached and realized here, it fucked me up. And you speak of creating talismans to inspire certain things to happen, and it uses the very real phenomenon of family annihilation, in a way that I think one could argue could give a pass to those perpetrators, because often they definitely have motives and they are monstrous people. But when you especially in the final sequence, when you see it play out in reality for the first time, it is so unsettling, because if things were beyond your control and you were just driven to do something unspeakable, like that fucking terrifies me, especially as a father. And so I can only give this my full-throated recommendation. I was still thinking about it, long after I walked out of the theater for it. And Angie asked me, it's like, should I watch this? And I was almost like, maybe you should, because it might fuck you up too much. But but before I move on, I don't think that this is a canon event. I think we need to ruminate on this movie a little bit more, and really give Longlegs, the character, a chance to really settle into our collective subconscious a little bit before we can really claim that this is like the best horror movie that's ever been made ever. But what did you think?
Yeah, I'm thoroughly on board with what you said. I just kind of have to acknowledge the fact that this movie is most certainly my shit. Where like this is, I don't know. I'd like to think. I mean, I could never probably make a movie this great, but if I were to be a filmmaker, this is sort of the type that I would aim for. This is the thing that I would aim for. This would be the type of movie I would think I would make. And saying that, I have to sort of acknowledge that the fact that because of that, I'm willing to overlook certain things. And, whether you want to call that bias or you want to call that just being a not very good film reviewer, with this film, I guess it just doesn't matter, because there are certain, especially with the plot, there are certainly some shortcomings. It's like why does the devil need props? Basically, why doesn't this seem like a little small potatoes for the devil? It's like, for Satan, literally the Lord of the underworld, he's just like, I'm gonna kill these like 9 people over like 30 years or whatever. There's just certain things, if you think about them for longer than 5 seconds, it falls apart a bit. But I'm willing to overlook those things because the filmmaking is so immaculate here. The like playing with like the aspect ratio, and sometimes it's transitioning before our very eyes, and we're getting old footage, and we're getting new footage, and the camera is upside down at certain times, and he's playing with the audience's anxiety by like framing shots with like a doorway in the background, and it's like someone is gonna fucking come through that doorway, and you're just watching it the entire shot. You're watching that open doorway, and then nothing ever happens, and he's playing with you. And yeah, I loved all the performances. I like you. I have to call out. I mean, I will call out the main people, and then I'll also call out every small, like, minor character or bit part in this movie is memorable. Like, every single one of them, whether it be the girl that's like the teenage girl that's working that like gas station who's like, "Daddy, the weird guy's here again," or like the Kiernan Shipka's cameo role as Carrie Ann Camera, the girl in the insane asylum, or the guy who runs the insane asylum, who literally says one line that's like, it's like a comedic line basically, and it got a really big laugh from the people I saw it with.
Was that about the IDs? Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah,
but we don't.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean and the wife of Blair Underwood, the Harker's partner, she was so good too in like the two scenes she was in, especially that final scene where she's just sitting there, just scared out of her mind. And so yeah, I we'll get into
Even,
more of the more specific
Blair
stuff,
Underwood,
but
he was unrecognizable to me.
Yeah,
I didn't even realize
it
was him. Like, he's grown. Like, he is like a man now.
Yeah, he looks a lot older than, because in real life he doesn't have the mustache, and when he puts on that mustache, he looks about 20 years older than he actually is. Yeah, but yeah, I thoroughly love this film. I think it is, for the most part, it is deserving of the hype, I think, but there is definitely some hyperbole going on with the marketing, as there is a lot of times nowadays with these companies like A24 and Neon, and they've found their niche. This is how they get butts in seats, by showing that thing that says 100% Rotten Tomatoes score, or like the best movie since Silence of the Lambs, or whatever. That's how they get butts in seats. I understand that's how they get butts in seats, and I'm not gonna get them too much on that point. But yeah, I love this.
What did you make of like what is the point of the dolls? And what are the orbs inside of them?
I guess I kind of saw them as like a conduit for bringing out people's evil sides, I guess, is how I would term it. And I think the biggest clue that we get for that is when they bring it to like the mortuary guy in the morgue, and he was like scanning it with his ultrasound thing, and he says that line that's like, "Yeah, it was really weird. I was scanning it, and I swear to God, I heard the voice of my ex-wife," or something like that. And so I almost feel as if it's a vehicle for bringing out people's worst side, basically. And I feel as if, like, if that mortuary assistant guy would have been targeted by Longlegs, that is sort of his vehicle for bringing out his evil side, as his ex-wife, because he fucking hates her guts. He hates her, and that's how you bring out this dude's evil side. And that's how I saw it. I don't know. What do you think?
That makes a lot of sense, because I wasn't quite sure. Like, I thought it was just the hokum that Perkins put in there, just to have some kind of artifact to bring it forward. But like it I don't know, like it wasn't quite explained enough. But I think but I'm coming around, because I think the less is more approach is almost better, as opposed to someone just opening a book and being like, "Oh yes, here are the 14 orbs that you can use to you manifest Satan's influence on the earthly realm." This works a little bit better. And does that approach work for you, as far as who Longlegs is and how he wound up being this fucked up weirdo who's obsessed with bringing about the end of days?
Yeah, it did, because I think this is such a unique approach to religious horror. I mean, we've gotten a lot of them recently with the first Omen and Immaculate, and now we have this, and we just don't see this approach very often where, a lot of times religious horror is playing with like, oh, we got to have a cult, and we got to have like chanting, and we got to have like fucked up like Virgin Mary imagery and stuff like that. It's generally all the same, but in this it's like, no, we're going to do a religious horror movie, but we're not actually going to cover the religious aspect very much. We're going to ground it in the satanic panic, of the 80s, and the music, like I don't know what you would call it, the classic rock like music hysteria that happened in the 70s when parents thought that classic rock bands were putting like satanic lyrics in their music, and they were backmasking their songs, so when you played the records backwards it had like satanic verses. And so yeah, it's just such a unique approach to religious horror. So I totally buy into the metal balls thing, and how that's sort of Longlegs' vehicle for which he sort of enacts his plan. Because I don't know if you had any thoughts. Another thing that's not really explained is his ultimate plan, and I don't know if you had any thoughts as to what that is. But there is multiple times in the movie where they reference the Book of Revelation, and specifically the verse that's basically like, and I saw the 7 beasts emerge out of the sea, and they had 7 heads, or whatever that verse is.
Yeah.
And I almost feel as if, it's like those are the people, like if Longlegs had killed all of those girls, he was under the impression, whether or not it was actually going to happen, he was under the impression that that was going to bring about the end times. And so is that sort of how you saw it, or how did you see that?
Yeah, you hear that especially from Harker's mother too at the end, because it's like she's just euphoric about standing on the beaches watching the 7-headed beast rise. Like that is, like that's what's kept her going, because she's so afraid of damnation, and the only way to spare herself damnation is to bring hell to earth, basically. And it was logical, in the universe it was. But I guess that begs the question, like, so like, did Longlegs succeed or not?
Yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate question, because the movie kind of leaves it hanging. You're not really sure what happens in that final scene or what is going on. But I don't think he did, and I think it's because he wasn't successful in killing the daughter of Harker's partner, of Blair Underwood's daughter. And because I don't know how you interpreted that final scene, but basically the way that I interpreted it was that she was going to blow up that final, the final doll. She was going to shoot it in the head and blow up its metal ball, but she couldn't bring herself to do it because, basically I don't know if it was enacting its sort of influence on her, but even so, she was still sort of able to get away. I think with Blair Underwood's daughter, they were able to get away, to probably walk out the front door and get away from that situation. I think, I don't know, but I've heard people also interpret it as like she says like, okay, let's go, and then she like doesn't move from the spot that she's standing in. So she's so influenced by the doll that there's like nothing she can do. She's basically grounded in her spot. But yeah, how did you see it?
See, I think I misinterpreted what I was seeing, because I thought that she just ran out of bullets, but was she like racking the chamber and pulling it back?
Okay, yeah, you might be right. Yeah, because she does try
repeatedly. That's what the wiki
her
says.
gun jams.
Okay. Yeah. So and it could just be that, like, she is fated now to carry it on. Like, and that implication is really fucked up, you know? Because, yeah, what does she do after we cut to one last appearance by Longlegs himself to be like, "Hail Satan," and he like blows a kiss, you know. So because he like in his last moments he mentions the fact that, oh yeah, I'm gonna die, but I'm gonna be everywhere. So like now, like the that malign influence is just a part of reality, and I would almost welcome a sequel to explore it further, but what more can you do? This movie does so much, and it kind of it almost exhausts what the premise can go with it. Because like if there is a sequel, it's like, oh, we just got to kill one more person, and then apocalypse happens. Like what else could there possibly be within its lore to explore? There might not be as much.
Yeah, I don't think there will be a sequel. I know that Oz Perkins, I mean, I don't think he's done a sequel yet in his career, but then again, he's never had a movie blow up this big. And so yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see, because I mean the movie is doing gangbusters, and so it is entirely possible. But yeah, before we talk about that, I did definitely wanted to touch on that, just how well this movie is doing. But we got to talk Nicolas Cage. We got to talk, yeah. As far as, I mean, his performance, it's sort of what we've come to expect from a lot of Nicolas Cage movies, sort of just going gonzo, completely gonzo with it. Did it work for you? Did it work for your theater that you were in? I mean, I don't know how, I was in a sellout crowd. I would like a complete sellout crowd. And so, yeah, I want to know if it worked for you personally. I want to know if it worked for your theater, or were people laughing at it because they were too uncomfortable? What was going on there?
There was some of that. Like, it was a pretty full theater. It is, you know, State Fair weekend here in Minot. And so like that gives you a, you know, some of the country bumpkin crowd. I can say that because I'm one of them. And, you know, and usually they were the ones who were invested in like, and uncomfortable, in the sense that they were disturbed just by the sight of him. And, you know, to the movie's credit, a lot of the times he's like half in frame, or it's like it's shot in such a way that you don't see his face until it's like right there in front of you in the interrogation room. But there was some snickering, you know, like at times, but that was mostly from the pothead sitting next to me. I always wind up getting them. Like they're
getting right next to the pothead.
I'm always right next to the potheads who just think everything is hilarious. And this is not quite the horror movie that I would laugh at throughout, you know, to cope with how it might be scaring me. You know, like this isn't a horror movie where you delight in it in that way. At least I don't. And yeah, no, he, like the way that he talked, like his mannerisms, it just was unlike. It felt like alien. Like this was like this. I was like, I would believe that this person had sold their soul to the devil, just because of how unhinged and liberated they were to behave in ways outside the social norms, just in general. And so that was a good choice, I thought. The thing he does with his hands to that store clerk, you know, like where he's like
over his eyes.
Over his eyes. Yeah. It was just like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, like and why do you talk to every young girl like, you know, like you know her? And I guess that's maybe because he does, you know, because of his allegiances and the powers it affords him. But what were the reactions that you got?
There was a little bit of uncomfortable laughter. My theater was pretty well behaved, especially for how many people were in there. And the movie does, luckily, I think, give the audience a couple moments of comedic relief to sort of release the tension, like the aforementioned the insane asylum guy, you know, who says about the ID cards, and then there's also the scene where I love how awkward Micah Monroe's character is, because you get the scene of her, you know, when they they drive up to her partner's driveway and he's like, come on inside, meet the family. And she's like, do I have to? And then you get the scene of her in the little girl's room and she has no idea what to do. She is just, dealing with a child is completely alien to her. And they're just sitting there on the bed, just in silence. And yeah, that was great. And so yeah, you do get these moments to release the tension that I appreciated, and yeah, and I did want to. Here's one thing I do want to touch on with Longlegs as a character, and I wanted to say this because I don't think enough people are talking about it. I do think that I have this theory, and I mentioned this earlier this year with Dune Part 2, where I think certain movies get to a certain level of critical acclaim that people don't want to criticize them because they will feel othered for doing so. And with Dune Part 2, there was a lot of stuff going on with that movie that should have brought sort of those type of people out of the woodwork, like the constant complainers about stuff like white savior narratives, but we didn't really see a whole lot of that because Dune Part 2 was so critically acclaimed. And with this film, I feel as if Longlegs as a character is clearly coded as being trans, and it has to do with the voice, the makeup, in his in his basement hovel. He has Lou Reed posters everywhere. He has David Bowie posters. The Lou Reed poster is literally the album art from the album Transformer, which is literally an album about Lou Reed's cross-dressing.
Interesting.
He also has, I mean, it's clear that Nicolas Cage took, influences from Buffalo Bill, not only just Silence of the Lambs as a whole, the movie as a whole, but Buffalo Bill as a character in that movie. And then there's all the T-Rex stuff too. Like the movie begins with a T-Rex quote and it ends with a T-Rex song, Bang a Gong. And if people don't know this, a lot of
it. Like what is this, the symbolism behind that? It tonally, it just hit me over the head and I was like, what? Why? What does this have to do with it?
I think it's just I had sort of talked earlier about how he's, it's playing a lot with like Satanism and like classic rock from the 70s where everybody thought there was satanic lyrics and everything, and T-Rex was one of those bands, but it wasn't because they were Satanists. It was because the singer, the lead singer Mark Bolan of T-Rex was a in the closet gay man, and he was a cross-dresser, and so I think that sort of led to a lot of people in the 70s going like, you are a Satanist because, and the lyrics, a lot of T-Rex lyrics have to do with that. And so yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is all of this stuff is evidence to me that Longlegs is, clearly a trans-coded character, and this movie it's walking a very fine line where historically in horror films there's an association of trans people with the mentally ill or with serial killers, and it has me wondering, why aren't more people mad about this? Why aren't more people complaining about this? And it's not that I personally want that to be the case. I don't care either way. I'm not offended by it. I just wonder why other people aren't, because I feel like as if they should be, but I feel as if the universal acclaim for this movie is making those people sort of second guess wanting to do that, because they will feel as if like I'm not on the bandwagon. I will be othered if I do this. I will not be, there's something there, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. And just to like my analysis of that particular phenomenon between Dune and this one, it's like in the case of Longlegs, it's not quite as in your face about their transness. You infer it, and it's not quite central to, like, even it definitely is an aspect of the character, a key component, but it's not the thing that is the driving motivation. they're Longlegs is primarily a Satanist, whereas Buffalo Bill was a man who wanted to become a woman and couldn't do it by conventional means. And with Dune, I like, this was my own observation in the months that have followed. All of those people who typically would come out of the woodwork to just take issue with it, violating their particular virtue and point of view, is because they have latched on to the notion that Dune as a narrative, even though it is you could argue it is a white savior story, it's inherently self-critical of that kind of thing. And that's what Dune Messiah more completely attacks. It's like, because of Paul's choices in Dune, his downfall is ensured in Dune Messiah, basically.
Sure.
Like, you are doomed to become the thing you don't want to be. And in this, we don't really know enough about Longlegs to know why he is the way he is. And I think that era of mystery, kind of, staunches, or holds off people from, pursuing that, in addition to not wanting to be on the outside of something that is widely acclaimed and accepted. People don't want to be the turd in the punch bowl. They, they just want to be, they want to be in the in group, and the in group is decidedly in favor of this movie. So I think you're right on about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you make a good point with Dune. Yeah, because we will most certainly see Paul's fall in the next film. But yeah, it was just something I was thinking about. Nobody's really talking about that aspect, and it really stood out to me while watching the movie. But yeah, Nicolas Cage is just completely bonkers. And
but
is there anything else you wanted to
in it? Like, how much screen time did he actually have? Like,
10 minutes maybe.
Yeah,
I would say probably throughout the whole thing.
Less than Hannibal Lecter. It's such a but he's ever present. He is. You expect him to pop out at any moment or see him scurrying, around, because he plays on your Perkins plays on your expectations quite a bit with how he shoots and composes everything. And he definitely baits the audience along until the hook is, firmly in your mouth and you're going wherever he's going with it. And so, its first weekend, how much money has it made so far?
Yeah, well, right now it is, as of us recording this Saturday, July 20th, it is up to about 30 million. And 23 of that was from its opening weekend. And one thing that is really interesting, that is by all metrics a resounding success. This movie has already, done its budget 3 times over, and it's going to continue to do well. One thing that I think is very interesting when you look at the metrics on like Box Office Mojo is 98% of this movie's box office has been domestic, and 2% has been global, has been the rest of the world. And that is like an anomaly. That is so weird that we, here in the US, we're going gaga for this movie, and then everywhere else it's just like, okay, this is fine, I guess.
It is kind of centered in the American 80s, and 90s satanic panic experience. So
most certainly. And so my big question with this is, what, this movie has done amazing, and there have been other horror movies this year that have done amazing, and other movies that have just shit the bed. So, what do you think separates the 2024 box office winners from the losers? Because we have, on one side, we have Immaculate and A Quiet Place Day One, and then on the other side we have The Strangers Chapter 1 or whatever it's called, and The First Omen and Abigail and Maxine, and those have all just bombed completely. And so what do the movies on the left have that the movies on the right don't?
I think it's the movies on the right are just pedestrian. I haven't seen all of them that you mentioned, but like Maxine should be on the left, but its filmmaker just didn't reach high enough. And I haven't seen A Quiet Place, but I respect the filmmaker behind it enough to, assume that he, did a good job with it since it's succeeding. And and immaculate compared to The First Omen. I think I mentioned this in my review of The First Omen. Immaculate just took a much like stronger, stance on like driving home its message at the end versus The First Omen. It wasn't trying to set up a franchise. It was giving you a singular experience and, and delivering on it. And that's what Longlegs does. Maxine, of course, doesn't quite feel, but then again, like you could be a sequel, you could be a prequel, you could do a good job with it. And I think what's, driving it is actually wanting to deliver something versus checking boxes. And a lot of the movies that have failed this year in respect to horror just aren't trying. It's just paint by numbers. What are people expecting to have on screen? We're going to do that. They deliver sites that are tired, or they don't go further than what has come before, or make good use of their influences, like Longlegs does.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's all about making something that people haven't seen before, or something that people haven't seen in a long time. And I think, all those comparisons to Silence of the Lambs, eventually, in the end, that does help this movie's cause, because people, they see that and they say, oh, I haven't gotten a movie like that in a long time, and so I want to go see this. Or I don't know what like the makeup of the theater that you saw this movie was, but I was kind of looking around in my sold out screening, and it was like old people, young people, everybody in between, a couple of dumbass parents with their, kids were there. And
oh my God, why would you take children to a movie like this? It would fuck them up beyond belief.
This is like
God.
nightmare fuel in the utmost. This movie will, in 30 years, those kids are still going to be thinking about the time they saw Longlegs in the theater. So, but yeah, it really is. This movie has no bounds when it comes to target audience, I don't think, because there really is like something that's getting everybody in the door. And so, resounding success. I'm sure this will probably be maybe on both of our top 10s at the end of the year. Definitely mine.
More than likely. And I just want to call out one last influence that I haven't heard, like on the movie, or at least something that I was reminded of. I had the same feeling within me. Was Hereditary. There's this movie, they're very similar, where it's like you're given characters and you're presented with this slow unfurling of doom. And the destination is telegraphed. Everything is like plot wise, its twists are obvious. If you're paying a look of attention, it's not trying, like, it rewards you for figuring it out, and you're rewarded for being surprised. And so that all works in its favor. Definitely go see it. It's God. I had forgotten that the Strangers movie had even come out. The first time I saw Strangers, I just want to say this, speaking of theater makeup, it was at the free theater at the NDSU Union, where they just played it off a DVD. And at the part where Liv Tyler's running out of the cabin, a black guy literally did the "run, bitch, run" thing. And everyone
from Scary Movie.
Yeah, and everyone just busted a gut. It totally took you out of it, but it was that's where it's like you welcome that kind of thing, because it softens the mood a little bit, especially for a movie as dour as that one. Yeah. Moving on to the mentionables today, you have a new game to talk about, which is always exciting.
Yeah, the Steam summer sale just happened, and I this is one of my pickups from that. This game, it's called ADACA, ADACA, and this this game just sort of exited its early access phase where its entire campaign is out now. They did the campaign in chapters, and this thing is the real deal. I really like this game. I don't know if you're one of those people that holds Half-Life 2 in like high regard,
Oh yeah.
but I most certainly do. That was like one of the like taste making games for me when I was a kid. Just like absolutely formed me. And ever since then I've been on the lookout for like the next Half-Life 2, just a great single player first person shooter campaign is something I'm always down for. And this game certainly delivers. It's very, very similar to Half-Life 2. It's sort of a mostly linear single player campaign. You have a glove on your hand that basically acts as your gravity gun. And then your gun, you got your gun in the other hand. And it's very, very similar to Half-Life 2. And they make no bones about that. They definitely lean into the influences. But yeah, I finished up the campaign earlier this week. Totally worth it. Pick it up for. I think I picked this game up for. It was on sale for $10. I want to say,
really?
and it's well worth that. And so, yeah, very, very cool stuff.
See, I held my wallet close. I was like, you have so many games in your backlog. Don't spend any money on things you're not going to play right away. But this, like the knowing that this is a Half-Life 2 style experience makes it intriguing, because that was a formative game for me as well. And since they've been depriving me of content in that regard, I better get what I can. Did you ever play Alex, that VR
No,
game?
God, I want to so bad, but yeah, that's just one of those things where I'm not gonna go buy because that game is still locked to the Steam, you have to have a PC VR headset that'll be able to access Steam in order to play it, right?
Yeah.
Because that game is still locked to the Steam store, and so yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. I would never buy a VR helmet for as much as I would want to play that game. I that's something I'm never gonna do.
Here's a quick question for you. Would you buy a VR helmet to give yourself a theatrical experience at home? You like to virtualize
Like
that
if they,
field of view? Because there are people
you
who
mean
do
if
that.
they, there are those apps. Yeah, I've played with those before where. Yeah, it's an app that basically makes it look like you're sitting in a theater chair and you're looking up at a huge screen, but you're really just looking at, the
Yeah.
two little lenses. Yeah, I've done that before, and I don't really I personally don't really buy into the illusion of that. I would much rather just,
Get the real
um,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, get the real thing or watch a movie on my regular TV because VR headsets are still mega uncomfortable in my opinion too. Where after 30-40 minutes, you really get the feel that you have a like 10-pound thing on your head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Well, my mentionable this week is, obviously concerned with our completely unhinged, news timeline that we've been going through the last month or so. And my only antidote to the chaos has been people I've recommended before. This is kind of like a double dip for me. But Cigar and Jetty and Crystal Ball of Breaking Points, they had broken away from The Hill. They had a show on The Hill for a really long time. And then they went independent, and all the better for it because they actually engage, conversations amongst differing ideologies. They have all kinds of people on board, and they entertain narratives that, let's be real, my fellow, members of the news media are, kind of cowed or, motivated not to give a lot of attention to. They were one of the people getting castigated for showing a clip of, Biden looking out of it when he was, in Normandy, like over Memorial Day. And then they got to be the ones to be like, hey, we was right. We was right. You know, like we're not cheap fakes, but they aren't just partisan hacks. They play it down the middle as best they can, and they will get into spirited debate, which is often missing from news discourse about current events. So I point people in their direction.
I bet that if you're like a fan of political commentary or like that type of stuff, I bet you're eating good right now.
Oh,
like
Jesus.
as far as, oh my God, the news cycle has been. I typically, I try to avoid a lot of that stuff, but it was even. I was in Fargo over this past couple days, and even with like very little access to the internet, as I said, my mom doesn't have Wi-Fi, and just basically having access to cable TV, it was like unavoidable. Like, oh my God, it was. So I bet people that, like the same type of stuff you like are eating good right now.
Yeah, there's too much to talk about. And it's I've almost had my fill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I should probably get in a different line of work, if I've truly had enough. But that's why we have movies. That's why we have TV, to shut the world out for a little bit and be scared and moved and brought to tears and to laughter. So check out Longlegs if you want all of those emotions wrapped up in one movie. But I'll be doing, but then again, here I go. My minisode is more than likely going to be concerned with this topic somewhat, but focused on how our fiction kind of reflects reality, or is predictive programming for it. I'm going to be digging into some plot lines from The West Wing, and I'm going to be revisiting Alex Garland's Civil War, because there's just some things that were raised in both that are on my mind quite a bit these days. So I need to get it out. I need to get it out of my head and inflict it on you good people. And after that, it's there's a movie we'd like to see, and then there's one we're more than likely going to have to cover. So we won't quite tease which will be coming up on August 5th, but we'll reconvene and see you all then. So take care, Matt. As always, it's a pleasure.
Yep. See ya.